Hi, and thanks for logging on to the Daily DVAR Halacha. And here's a brand new halacha for you, and it's for Thursday, the 19th day of November. Hope you're not tired of kosher laws. I'm just going to do a couple more, and here goes. This one's not exactly fully written out in the Shulchan Aruch, but it's in the Code of Jewish Law, but it's so practical, and in one way or another it is. But anyway, let me just say it. If you have a milk carton, I know milk doesn't come in cartons so often anymore, but if you have a milk carton sitting in your fridge, and you and I know that certain types of milk containers do drip some of their milk underneath them, and if you have one on a top shelf in your fridge, and underneath it you have some meat sitting there, well, okay, so need I say any more? How could you set up things in your fridge such that a drippy milk carton is sitting on the top shelf and underneath it there's some meat sitting there? You got to make sure that that's not happening in your refrigerator, and watch out for any dairy item like that that drips and can have its drips come down onto the meat that's in your refrigerator. Next, if you have a peeler, let's say a potato peeler, and it sometimes peels potatoes, let's say it's parf, and it's always peeling potatoes. Sometimes those potatoes are used for a dairy meal, sometimes those potatoes are used for a meat meal. That's totally fine. You're peeling parf potatoes and then those parf potatoes and then going off to be part of a meat meal or a dairy meal. That's totally fine. But don't wash that peeler with meat or the dairy dishes, because it's going to be in hot water and it acts like a knife, because it scrapes deep into the thing, and so it gets you into trouble when something that's like a knife, which really gets its flavor, radically into, you know what I mean by radically, it strongly can move in and out of the knife of the peeler or the blade of the knife or the peeler because of the way it presses so hard on the food. So you cannot be washing a parf peeler with meat dishes and also with dairy dishes and still want to call that peeler parf. That you cannot do. If you have a fleshik peeler in your house that works with meat foods and a dairy one, that's fine. But like we've said for some of these other items, don't have them look the same. That could lead to a problem. And if they are identical in looks, or at least close to looking like the same, then certainly label the meat one meat and the dairy one dairy. Let's move on quickly to pet food. Do you know that your animal does not have to eat kosher food? Let's not get ridiculous here. But you are not allowed as a Jew to benefit from basar b'chalav, from milk and meat being together. And if your pet food is milk and meat mixed together, when you feed it to your pet, you're benefiting from basar b'chalav, from milk mixed together with meat. And you should not have pet food that benefits you that's made of milk and meat. But before you tune out, please realize that this only applies if the milk is from a kosher species and the meat is from a kosher species also. So if in your pet food there's cow meat, doesn't matter if it was slaughtered properly or not, but if there's cow meat with something like cow milk in your pet food, then that's when you got to watch out for it. But if there's horse meat mixed together with cow milk in your pet food, then you do not have to worry about it at all, because that's not what we call basar b'chalav. We only call it milk and meat that's improperly mixed together if it's kosher species meat and kosher species milk. So check, if you need to know on a certain pet food that you eat, try to find out if that happens at all in the pet food that you're using. On to pickle jars. Sometimes you poke a fork into a pickle jar to get yourself a pickle, and you don't quite successfully get that pickle, and the fork that you were using was, let's say, a meat fork, and then a day later you're stabbing at another pickle to get out a pickle for a dairy meal, and the fork that you're using is dairy. You could see the trouble here. If that pickle fell back in the jar and had been handled by a meat fork, and then it didn't come out, and then it's ending up in a dairy meal the next day, that's a problem. So please, if you ever do pierce a pickle with a clean dairy utensil or a clean meat utensil, and get that pickle out of there, as so it's meat intended for a meat meal, meat fork touch that pickle, and that pickle now ends up with a meat meal, that would be okay. It is okay also to have one pitcher that serves water to dairy meals and meat meals. It's a parf pitcher, just holding water, that's fine. But make sure it doesn't come in contact with the food, and do wipe down the handle of the pitcher before it moves from a meat meal to a dairy meal, because some stuff from your hands from the meat meal, if you were just holding a piece of chicken in your hands, could get on the handle, so that should be wiped before it then moves over and does the same thing for a dairy meal. You get it. Thanks for logging on, and log on again tomorrow for more. Bye-bye.